The White House forced to answer once again why another radar screen went blank.
FedEx 1989, I hand you off here. Our scopes just went black again. If you care about this, contact your airline and try to get some pressure for them to fix this stuff.
That happening this morning. New questions about old tech at Newark Liberty International Airport and how the government might respond, plus the president's team flying out to meet the Chinese. And he's teasing a possible reduction in tariffs.
I think we're going to come back with a fair deal for both China and us.
Have you given Bessent a number of how low you're willing to go?
Yeah,
What's the number? Share that number?
No, but I put out a number today, 80%, so we'll see how that all went.
And planes, are they the only things in our skies? Ross Coulthart joins us live on a big congressional hearing next week, why Congress is continuing its search for answers with UFOs. Hello, good evening, happy Friday. Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. Also tonight, is President Trump going to bless raising taxes on the rich? And she is just one of 9. So why did the Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor just urge lawyers to fight back against the president? Some of what we'll get into this evening. But first tonight, here from The Hill, what is going on at Newark? It is one of the country's busiest airports, and it had yet another blank screen today. A pilot told they are on their own. And now the White House is responding tonight. Joe Khalil with the latest from the administration today when they were asked about all this. But first to our Marcus Espinosa, live tonight at Newark. Marcus?
Blake, yeah, the second time in 2 weeks, the FAA confirming that this did, in fact, happen. 90 seconds, no radar out of the tower that is based in Philly that controls this area here in Newark. Newark has certainly not had a good couple weeks here. They are really all hands on deck on trying to fix this. And then the transportation secretary, he also unveiled that plan on Thursday to try to really get a hold of this thing and try to redo everything, saying the current system still relies on older technology like floppy disks, which still blows my mind, and towers are getting some of their replacement parts from eBay. Apparently, the FAA has an eBay account. Duffy says the plan calls hiring more controllers and for 6 new air traffic control centers equipped with the latest tech. Duffy, not the only one chiming in about all the work that needs to be done. Take a listen to Rep. Josh Gottheimer on the staffing issues plaguing this region.
The region is short about 40 air traffic controllers that it needs. 40. So you're talking about, right now it has around 22, and it should have somewhere in the 60s. The tower facility, which oversees all incoming traffic right now into Newark, was built in 1973. 1973. Think about how old that is. It's like Brady Bunch era.
You know, I never caught much of that show, Blake, but I heard it's a fantastic one. So that just really gives you an idea of how old some of this tech is here, and they're really trying to replace everything. A couple things still to consider: how long this is going to take, perhaps 3 to 5 years. And then also the Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy, says they're going to rely on Congress for the funding, but certainly a lot of things to consider. Not a good week here at Newark.
Brady Bunch era, one way to put it. Our Marcus Espinosa live tonight over at Newark. Marcus, thank you. So as the Trump administration plans to conduct a multi-billion-dollar overhaul of the outdated air traffic control systems, the White House continues to point the finger at the prior administration. The press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, earlier today.
I think it's unfortunate that the previous administration sat in their hands and did nothing, but how grateful we are that we have a Department of Transportation and a secretary and a president who's willing to take bold action and change.
Our Joe Khalil joins us live from the White House tonight, where the administration was asked what they might do about this and their response. Joe?
Yeah, as you heard, Blake, definitely some Biden blaming. But, aside, this is not a political question. I think the administration is very clear about that they understand the stakes of this. The fact that, as Marcus just laid out, you have outages where for 30 seconds to a minute and a half, these air traffic controllers are blind, they know could have catastrophic effects. So the press secretary reiterated today the plan that Secretary Duffy laid out. She talked about how this is an expansive plan, that they're really taking on this ambitious one. And Transportation Secretary Duffy himself talked about how this is a 10 to 15-year project historically that they are going to try to get done in the next 3 to 4 years. He says 6 brand new air traffic control centers. They want to replace 600 old radar. They want to replace control towers and add newer, modern, both hardware and software in those towers as well. The challenge is going to be, and we've spoken to people here, they're very clear-eyed about this, Blake. They're talking about, at a minimum, $12.5 billion. That's a number that was thrown out. Secretary Duffy says it's going to have to be more than that, and he wants all the money up front, not for Congress to be passing chunks of it in piecemeal. So we will see if he's successful in getting those things.
Our Joe Khalil live tonight at the White House. Joe, thank you. Joining us now tonight here on the Hill, he is the newly minted congressman from the state of Florida, Jimmy Petronis, who is also a member of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. You've been on the job a couple months, Congressman. First time here on the Hill. Thanks for being with us tonight. Appreciate it.
Of course.
So, look, I want to get to you on the bigger structural things, but then there was also the incident at Newark today, right, where this pilot was basically told for a little while, hey, you're on your own. Here's the sound, and I want to get your reaction on the other side.
FedEx 1989, I hand you off here. Our scopes just went black again. If you care about this, contact your airline and try to get some pressure for them to fix this stuff.
Scopes just went black again, and you got to call the airlines. Bloomberg is reporting tonight basically of the possibility of maybe more flight cutbacks over at Newark and even voluntary decreases with the airliners themselves. You think that's appropriate at this point in time for Newark?
Well, safety is going to be the number one issue at hand. We've got to make sure that we've got an environment where we don't have any accidents. So I appreciate that this is not at the FAA level. This is at the Secretary of Transportation level. The president has empowered Secretary Duffy to be full occupied on this particular issue. And it's not anything that exactly what he said. We don't need to rest on this. We've got to attack. Now, transportation infrastructure is going to lean forward. We're going to provide the billions of dollars needed to Secretary Duffy to make these necessary upgrades. Okay. But let me remind you, the last 4 years, nothing was done. They were prioritizing bicycles and charging stations that were never built when these dollars
this also has been
into the other systems.
This has been the air traffic control issue for a while, and the outdated technology for a while. I mean, you can go from Bush to Obama to Trump to Biden now to Trump, right? It's not like I know Republicans like to point to the last 4 years, Congressman, but you heard there from Gottheimer. We've heard from Duffy. We're talking about technology from the Brady Bunch era. So this has transpired across Democratic and Republican administrations.
Well, this is what happens. Look, I've overseen large multi-million-dollar software transitions. And what happens is longtime employees, you know what? They don't like letting go of Windows 3.1. Okay? So there is a learning curve. There is a fight that will take place. And it's not going to be easy. But that's why we've got to bring new people in, those that want to be part of the next generation air traffic controllers. And you know what? We're probably going to have to pay them more in order to get that industry and that profession where it needs to be.
Okay, so you sit on the Transportation Committee, the one that has the jurisdiction over this, and I've heard you here talk about money a couple different times. Here was the Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy, just yesterday on the issue of what's needed. I'll get your reaction on the other side.
The House and the Senate, the committees of jurisdiction, have worked on this kind of infrastructure in the past. So I want them to come up with numbers. If they want to allow us to bid this out and get numbers from industry to do the project, that's fine. But again, whether it's part of the big, beautiful bill or it comes in a different package, we do need all the money.
We've heard $12 billion, which was a House panel. The industry has floated maybe upwards of $30 billion. Look, it's a lot of money, right? The delta there is a lot. Or is it not? How do you sort of approach this?
Well, right now, $12.5 billion is what we've got coming out of T&I. But I'm sure as Secretary Duffy's going to be wrapping his arms around this, incidents like this that happened in New Jersey today are very, they're very problematic. So, look, he is trying to build the bicycle at the same time he's riding on it. So as we get those numbers, look, Congress is going to be nimble on this. If we need to lean forward and adjust the priorities, we're going to do that. The safety of the American public is just too important to put at risk.
We'll leave it there. Jimmy Petronis, nice to have you tonight here on the Hill, Republican from the state of Florida, Transportation Committee. Thank you, sir.
Take care.
All right, so as the Department of Transportation seeks to rebuild air traffic control, the Secretary is calling on Congress, as we talked about there, for funding.
I can't just announce it to you and say it's going to happen in 3 to 4 years. I need help. I can't do it by myself. And it's going to take the help of the Congress to make that happen. Well, I'm going to ask the Congress for upfront appropriations to give us all the money.
Joining me now, Chris Stirewalt, host of The Hill Sunday, senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Hello, sir.
Doctor.
Happy Friday.
And to you.
This just sort of fell before the Trump administration, right? This is the first 100 days, give or take 110, whatever we're at. As I pointed out you're going to hear Republicans say, oh, the last 4 years. But as I laid out, the technology was through Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden, and now here we are. What's before the Trump administration right now? Because they're going to have 4 full years to deal with this.
Why do we have an infrastructure problem in America? We have an infrastructure problem in America not because of insufficient spending, but because we don't fix the stuff that needs fixing, because nobody wants to cut a ribbon on a improved air traffic control system, right? You say, we need you to appropriate money for us so that we can update the computers there. And the congressman thinks, what am I taking credit for? That's nothing new. That's super expensive, and it's nothing new. People they like defense spending. That's sexy. That feels good. Right. Spending money to upgrade existing computer systems does not feel like something that is going to get you elected.
But are we at a tipping point here?
I mean,
or is this just another in the long line of
the availability cascade of air transit and air traffic problems that we have seen since the tragic crash at Reagan National Airport? People are watching this very closely, and they're very anxious right now about what's going on, and they're going to have to address it. And you can't just always cast blame backward. They're going to have to say, we have an answer for this. We're doing a good job. We figured it out.
Right. At a certain point, you can't say the last 4 years. There's going to be questions of what are you going to do over the next 44 months.
And you see it on the economy. You see it on a host of issues that voters are the thing about the 100 days, it's a meaningless milestone, but it is about the time when voters say, okay, now we're done with that old guy, and the grace period is over, and now it's on you.
I'll see you back here later here on the show. We also have a little Friday Night Unfiltered again.
Oh, I'm feeling it.
On a Friday.
I'm feeling it.
Chris Stirewalt, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right. Still to come here on The Hill, taking the fight to Trump. Is that what a sitting Supreme Court justice just suggested? What Sonia Sotomayor told lawyers last night, is she urging them to dial up more legal action? Plus this.
We're going into the field to investigate allegations that the US may well have recovered non-human technology.
You know him, that's Ross Coldhart. He has a new UFO special here on NewsNation. We're talking to Ross tonight because here in Washington, Congress is taking up this issue next week. I'll tell you what that's all about. And headed to Switzerland to talk to the Chinese, what the president is saying tonight about tariffs. We'll explain. Welcome to Washington. This is the center of politics. I'm Blake Berman. Hope you're having a great Friday. The Hill is coming right back. Stand up and fight this fight. That was the message from the Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor to hundreds of lawyers. According to reports, during an event with the American Bar Association, the justice declared, quote, if you're not used to fighting and losing battles, then don't become a lawyer. Adding, quote, our job is to stand up for people who can't do it themselves. The Supreme Court Justice even saying at one point, quote, right now, we can't lose the battles we are facing. Now, her comments come as the Trump administration targets so-called political rivals, such as law firms, even federal judges. Joining me now, NewsNation legal contributor Jesse Weber. Jesse, I saw this story this morning. Hello, happy Friday. And I picked up the phone and I texted Jesse and I was like, did this go over the line a little? Because on the one hand, she basically called out these attorneys, right? But then she said, right now, we can't lose the battles we are facing. And I'm going, wait a minute. Who's we? She's a Supreme Court justice.
Interesting words at an interesting time, speaking in front of the American Bar Association, which, as we know, has come under attack by the president.
Yes.
Look, I think she spoke in general enough terms that someone could say, well, she's just talking about new lawyers and she's talking about the legal profession and the need to be an advocate for your clients and to fight and to stand up. But you can't ignore it in the context of everything that's happening.
Yeah.
And you could interpret it in saying, not that she's encouraging lawyers out there to file lawsuits against the Trump administration.
You don't think some will read it that way?
I mean, some people will read it whichever way they want to read it.
Okay,
my interpretation of looking at it is not saying to create an impediment to Donald Trump's administration, but also stressing the importance of the preservation of law and the need to fight for what is right. But clearly, at a time like this, when other justices are making comments, you can take it for what it is.
Yeah, other justices, you were with us on Wednesday when we had that rare public appearance and comments from the Supreme Court Justice John Roberts. He sort of backed the institution. I guess it was sort of similar but different from Sotomayor.
I actually think he went more direct towards Donald Trump, talking about the independence of the court, saying that impeachment is not the vehicle to go forward with if you have a disagreement with the courts. I mean, he took this issue dead on, and it was only a few months ago he did the same exact thing. And as the Chief Justice of the court, I think he made a more blatant statement. So did Jackson a few weeks ago as well, basically saying that the courts are under attack, physical violence against the courts. So I think it's interesting to see this bipartisanship, this concern about the independence of the judiciary. I mean, we're at a point right now where the role and authority of the courts is being challenged, and it really shouldn't be.
Let me bring you to another legal figure, the New York Attorney General Letitia James.
Yeah.
There was basically a town hall, I guess you could say, last night in your neck of the woods there in New York, and there was a little bit of an incident. Roll it.
Will you apologize to President Trump for wasting millions of dollars and the state of New York for a witch trial? And how does it feel to know that you will be in prison for mortgage fraud?
We respect all opinions. Everybody knows those allegations are baseless. They're discredited.
All right, so the background here, she went after the Trump organization, got that massive judgment against them, and now the Department of Justice has opened up an investigation, Jesse, for basically what they're at least potentially looking into, the same thing.
The exact same thing. It's that you're overstating the value of your properties or misrepresenting your properties in order to get more favorable loan terms. It's the exact same thing. She went after Trump. And look, I said this before in this program. I'll say it again. I think Letitia James is way too political. And I think I've questioned a lot of the decisions that she's made. And it's a question of the strength of the case against the Trump organization. However, the investigation into her, it's hard to know exactly at this point because her attorney, Abby Lowell, said the documentation would say otherwise.
So we don't, in your view, you're not sure yet if the DOJ is right or wrong to go after her or look into it.
Look, I mean, you're talking about if she really did what they're potentially looking into her for, wire fraud, mail fraud, false statements. However, Abby Lowell's come forward and said, look, they're looking at old documentation. We can prove that she didn't misrepresent her property in Brooklyn or her property in Virginia. It wasn't her primary residence. It's hard to gauge at this point, although it is very interesting that they're being investigated for the same thing she went after Trump for.
Yes, sir. Jesse Weber, NewsNation legal contributor. Thanks. I'll catch you next week, Jesse.
Sounds good.
There's still much more ahead tonight here on The Hill. A live look, of course, Vatican City, why the new Pope could be finding out the truth, maybe, about UFOs, plus this.
There's these two here, and there's these two right here, and he came up right behind them.
Our investigative reporter, Ross Coulthart, joins us live here on The Hill on the other side of the break. He has a brand new special out this weekend. And by the way, a brand new congressional hearing on UFOs next week. Ross, other side when The Hill returns. Just about 6:30 here on the East Coast. Hope you're enjoying your Friday night. For months now, Congress has been vowing to get to the bottom of the truth about UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomenon. UFOs, basically, as they're commonly known. Explosive claims have been dropped in hearing after hearing, like this one from the former head of the Pentagon's UAP investigation unit, Luis Elizondo.
Let me be clear. UAP are real. Advanced technologies not made by our government or any other government are monitoring sensitive military installations around the globe. Furthermore, the U.S. is in possession of UAP technologies, as are some of our adversaries. I believe we are in the midst of a multi-decade secretive arms race.
Now, others have testified that the military is stonewalling these efforts. But next week, more UAP hearings said to be planned up on Capitol Hill by members of the House Oversight Committee. They have also, or at least one of them, has hired the UFO whistleblower David Grush to help with the investigation. Grush alleged that the Pentagon has been operating a secret UFO retrieval program. And this week, the Missouri Congressman Eric Burleson, who has spearheaded congressional efforts on UAPs, spoke to him a few weeks ago, as you see there. He told us that next week will be crucial.
It's going to be the most focused and intense UFO investigation week that I've had. We're going to be having meetings with Arrow. We're going to have an open hearing to the public.
Here now with what we can expect, potentially, NewsNation investigative journalist Ross Coulthart. Ross, it is always nice to see you, sir. Thanks for being with us tonight here on the Hill. You've got a big special. We'll get into that in a second. But I wonder what you think, if anything, what we might learn next week if this hearing at the House Oversight Committee ends up coming forward.
Good evening, Blake. Well, I can tell you the thing I'm most interested in is the very thing that you and I won't get to hear about, because what's significant about next week is that for the first time, we may very well be getting the first time that David Grush is put into a skiff, into a secure compartmented information facility where he can give evidence in detail to the members of the committee for the first time under oath. And this is where the opportunity will come for the members of Congress to actually hear properly for the first time the full details of what David Grush knows. He's already given evidence about it to the Senate Armed Services Committee and the Senate Intelligence Committee, but this is an opportunity for those members in the House who now have the security classification clearances to hear it. Okay. And David Grush got his clearance to be able to give it. And so we're going to get the opportunity for that hearing to happen.
So do you think Grush in that environment, so up here, as Ross laid out, in Washington, there's areas where you just can't talk about information. And they set up these skiffs so that lawmakers or whoever go in and it's secure, right? And so as Ross outlines, basically that's when Grush is going to be able to go in with the members of the committee and sort of talk about some things. Do you think that blows the doors wide open, or is it just incremental at that point?
It's always going to be incremental. At the same time as there are a lot of members, Anna Paulina Luna, as the chairman of this Transparency Committee, are trying to push the doors open. You've also got a huge resistance back from the intelligence community and the Pentagon. So it's a kind of a funny game right now. Everybody knows the known knowns are known. The big issue is, will you and I get the opportunity to see them and hear them? And that's what's playing out next week.
What's your best guess on that? Because we had our NewsNation DDHQ poll, Ross, just from last week, and this was I thought the most fascinating thing from it. Is the U.S. government hiding UFO information? 44% of the country say yes. It was about half of those who are Gen Z, basically like 30 and under. So the public wants more.
They sure do. And look, if the volume of interest that we have at NewsNation in this issue is any indication, the public want answers. And so a lot of people are looking to the new administration, to President Trump, to take a lead on this. And it's very interesting because we've now got former Senator Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, and now National Security Advisor. He's now in the prime position as somebody who has previously pushed for transparency on this issue to ask the hard questions of the intelligence establishment. So the ball is very much in the new administration's court. We're looking to the new president to take the lead.
You optimistic?
Yeah, I am. I actually really am. I'm getting good feelings from people in the administration. I do think that there is an intent to get to the bottom of this. You've got Tulsi Gabbard in DNI, Director of National Intelligence, Nash Patel in FBI. There is a secret FBI investigation ongoing into allegations of criminality and illegality. They are taking this seriously, commendably, for the first time in decades.
Tim Gallaudet, retired Rear Admiral, said this just about a week or so ago. I want to get your reaction on the other side.
The Navy possesses a trove of video evidence and data regarding UAP, and I see no reason why FLIR footage of UAP and Navy training ranges could not be declassified and shared with the scientific community.
You interviewed him, Ross. Is he on to something?
Oh, Tim Gallaudet is absolutely onto something. The guy oozes credibility. He's an extremely well-regarded person. He's headed NOAA, the National Oceanographic Atmospheric Administration. He's highly respected across the US Navy and the US Coast Guard. If what Tim is saying is being said, it's true. And I know there are videos, there are imagery that need to be released. The ball is in the court of the Pentagon and the intelligence community to make a decision about whether it's going to be open or whether it's going to be forced to be open.
You've got a big special this weekend on NewsNation. Tell me about it, Ross.
One of the things you and I have spoken about before is the drone incursions right across the United States. The question we asked is, where are these strange objects coming from? And we went to Arizona. We think there's very likely some kind of covert military facility that might explain where these objects are coming from. It does appear that there are collaborations going on between military craft, helicopters, and what appear, we filmed, large glowing golden orbs that are seen in and around the border of Arizona and Mexico. What's going on the border? That's what we went to find out.
All right. We'll check it out tomorrow night. Ross Coulthart, I always appreciate the time, sir. Nice to see you. Thank you.
Real pleasure. Thank you.
You got it. And here's the reminder here. Let's pop it up again. The NewsNation special with Ross hunting UFOs, the Desert Sky Mystery. You can hear exclusively from the former Border Patrol officer who's sharing a never-before-seen military-grade UFO video. 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 Central, right here on NewsNation. All right, still to come tonight here on the Hill. Speaking of tomorrow, a big day tomorrow as some pretty big talks take center stage.
You can be certain that President Trump and his trade team will ensure we work to achieve the best deal possible for America.
There is the big sit down in Switzerland, the U.S. on one side of the table, the Chinese on the other. Coming up on the other side of the break, I'm going to take you around the world and show you how this country this week compared to some of our trading partners and why it's not all doom and gloom for the 50 states. Full panel, other side. NewsNation, the president's team set for a big negotiation with China tomorrow in Switzerland. President Trump saying he may be willing to lower tariffs from the 145% total that it's at now, potentially down to 80%. The president speaking just a little while ago.
I think we're going to come back with a fair deal for both China and us.
Have you given Bessent a number of how low you're willing to go?
Yeah, I have.
Are you willing to share that number?
No. But I put out a number today, 80%, so we'll see how that all works out.
But I want to show you tonight what's happened in the past week when you compare what's gone on here in the U.S. and what's happened with some of our trade partners. In China, they had to stimulate their economy this week, and their exports to the U.S. plunged, down 21% in April 2025 compared to a year ago. And to our friends north of the border, this was the big story in Canada today. Unemployment reached its highest level since 2021 in the peak of COVID. But here at home, a massive trade deal, or at least the framework of one, announced with the United Kingdom. And this is what the stock market did this week. Yes, you're going to see some red there, but look at the percentile changes. The market basically flat, given all that's gone on around the world. This all as the U.S. heads abroad for new negotiations with China. Full panel here with me now. T.W. Arrighi, former communications aide to the Republican Senator Lindsey Graham. Johnay Wortel, former senior advisor in the Georgia Senate runoff election. Chris Steyerwalt, host of The Hill Sunday, senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. And Michael Schnell, congressional reporter for The Hill.com. Hello to you all. Happy Friday.
Hello.
Thanks for being here. So the president sort of set the table for this meeting, TW. The tariffs are at 145%. He talked about maybe they could drop down to 80%. He said it was up to Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary. Bloomberg reported this morning it could go down to 60. So what do you think he's trying to set up here?
A negotiation. What he's trying, he came with a heavy fist right away, not unlike he would probably do in the New York real estate market. 145% tariffs, throw a right hook, freak everybody out. And then as we get closer, say you're open to negotiations. Now he's thrown out a bunch of numbers. We'll see what that ends up coming out to once they sit down at the table. But look, you saw some other numbers there in Canada and how Chinese exports are changing. You can't replace the United States market if you are China. China will also see similar unemployment numbers with these tariffs. And there is one thing President Xi knows. He can only stay in power if his people have jobs and money's coming in the door.
So TW is basically saying this is the art of the deal. You willing to go there?
Well, listen, President Trump played tough with China with no real plan, right? We see him throwing out now a number that he's going to decrease this percentage by. It's not a real plan, right? And we hope that these talks coming up will not make the issue with China worse, but he's created instability in the markets in this process in the global markets and concern amongst consumers and investors. So this is really him playing football with the economy, and these talks with China really haven't been very productive.
I think a lot of Republican lawmakers are going to be watching closely because these folks have not been the biggest fans of the Trump tariffs. We saw last month or a few recent weeks when the Senate passed that resolution rebuking the Canadian tariffs. We saw another attempt late last month for them to try to rip away the Liberation Day tariff. Now that failed by a narrow margin because of attendance issues. But if all folks were in the building, it would have been adopted. There's some real, unease with these tariffs among Republicans. They're going to be watching closely to see if a deal can be struck, so some of those can be scaled back.
So I heard from the Fed chair, Jay Powell, this week, who described the U.S. economy, Chris, as in solid shape. The markets have held up. You see what's going on in Canada and China. Do you sit back and say, okay, this is the president sort of doing his thing? We've held up okay? Or is there another side to the story as you see it?
Well, they haven't done anything yet, right? The first shipments coming from China, the first vessels carrying the newly tariffed goods are just arriving now.
Okay.
So it's been a lot of talk to this point. Just to put it in perspective, if Donald Trump announced what is considered the better or beneficial trade deal with Great Britain, people would have been appalled and shocked. It's a 10% duty on all goods coming in from, and this is, by the way, our best friend. This is our closest ally in the globe. So if this is the friends and family package, is that you get everything that the people who live in your country are shipping to the people who live in our country, gets hit with a 10% tax.
What's next for everybody else? Well, and we have a trade surplus with them, too.
I think there's some magical thinking going on in markets and in politics where people say, well, it's really all heading to zero, and this is all a grand negotiation, and it's really heading to zero. But that's not what we saw in the UK.
So one of the things that Republicans, as Michael reports on every single day, is they're trying to marry the tax cut package with the president's sort of trade policies, right? Yeah. Republicans say this all goes hand in hand. There was a story today, and it started with the president of basically saying, okay, maybe I am open. Not maybe. He opened the door to taxing the rich.
Yeah.
Raising the top-end tax rate by about 2.5% for those making over $2.5 million. Here was the president in the Oval Office today, and here's how he described it.
The middle income and the lower income brackets save more. So it's really a redistribution. And I'm willing to do it if they want. I would love to be able to give people in a lower bracket a big break by giving up some of what I have.
He said it might be a redistribution, and I almost went like this and fell out of my chair, because here is where I once heard it a few elections ago, as Steyerwalt and I remember. Roll it.
We've had a president who's been putting in place a political and economic program that a lot of us don't recognize. He said that he believes in redistribution. All right?
You heard those boos, TW. It was the same thing that Mitt Romney crushed Barack Obama for.
There were a lot of Republicans who almost fell out of their chair when they found themselves defending tariffs.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Your party now is talking about tax increases and tariffs. Where
Donald Trump has broken the mold about what
the
typical Republican is. Look, Donald Trump has brought up the idea of taxing millionaires before. Years ago, he brought that up. And look, it comes down to revenue. That's a big part of it. He's also giving away gold cards to people who invest $5 million to get them. It's part of a revenue package. The redistribution language, be that what it may look. With tariffs, a side note on tariffs, they bring in more revenue, Donald Trump keeps saying. If you look in 1888, the last time we had a huge tariff package with Benjamin Harrison, what was funded? It went all to veterans. All the income went to veterans. We had a treasury surplus. Donald Trump sees this as part of the whole, marrying it with the tax package so they can get tax breaks to build more here and onshore here.
It is populist.
It is
right?
Indeed.
This rings well with your party, does it not?
It is indeed. Here we go, right? A lot of these Republicans held their nose, voted for Trump, said he's going to protect my wealth. I don't have anything to worry about. And here we now are having a conversation about the rich being taxed. So I think this is a really important thing to
Democrats should vote for the package, no?
Well, listen.
That's going to be, TW saying yes, right?
We need to look at how Donald Trump is really betraying some of the most loyal folks who have stood behind him and said, this is our president, let him do what he needs to do. And now they're kind of backpedaling now because now we see that he's breaking a promise, right? Which is to make sure that he's not taxing amongst the wealthiest amongst us. Okay. And now Democrats are taking a second look at this.
How's this going to play?
Look, I don't know if I actually see this coming to fruition just so against the orthodoxy of the Republican Party. But what I will say is this underscores that Republicans really don't have their tax package at the finish line yet. The fact that Republicans are throwing out increasing a tax on the rich. And by the way, I reported that President Trump asked for this as recently as Wednesday. So this has been something he has recently been pushing. The fact that they are talking about ideas like this just means that that package is so far away from showtime. You know, we have deficit hawks who are requesting that it's deficit neutral. I spoke to Chip Roy today, by the way, and he seemed okay with this idea because he wants it to be deficit neutral. And if there's not going to be those spending cuts, you got to look elsewhere. But then you have the debate over the SALT tax and Medicaid cuts. It's a mess.
Give me a yard line that this is on.
I mean, I'll say it's at like the 25, but not the 25 that you want to be at.
Right. Not in the red zone, I guess, right? No pun intended.
There's just so much that has to be done.
Republicans don't favor increased taxes on top earners. They told us not because they like rich people, but because they think it doesn't work. And the message from Republicans when they were talking about the repeal of what they called the death tax and other things was that you have to get the money out into the economy and that people spend it and that's supply side economics. And that's what they said they didn't want to give rich people better tax rates, but that doing otherwise wouldn't work and would hurt the economy. Now they're going to be put to the test of whether they actually believe the things they said.
You're totally right. And just a quick point. If that does come to fruition, they absolutely need to make carve-outs for S corps and small business owners that claim an income over that amount. I think that will happen, but that's a huge point.
Thank y'all. Appreciate it. Still to come tonight here on the Hill. Oh, yeah. Friday night Unfiltered. Myself and Chris, other side of the break. This is when our team puts together the best images of the week. Chris and I have no idea what's coming. You get our unfiltered thoughts. And Elizabeth Vargas reports still to come. She's following the latest blackouts at Newark Airport. Is it time to start worrying about flying? She'll ask a former air traffic controller. Minutes out, other side of the break. Friday night Unfiltered.
Hunting UFOs. Now, this ex-Border Patrol agent is going public for the first time with never-before-seen video.
It's over the border of the United States.
Hunting UFOs, a desert sky mystery. Saturday at 8, only on NewsNation.
Weekend is upon us, which means one thing here on the Hill. It is Friday night Unfiltered.
Ow.
This is the one time of the week where myself and Steyerwalt have absolutely no idea what the team is doing. We get the best images of the week. You get our thoughts unfiltered. Let's show the first one up here on the curved wall. What do we got? It's the best images of the week. Oh, yeah. I'm pumped about this one.
Are they really going to? So they're going to put the new $2 billion football stadium in.
I think there's a couple things here, right? It's the new stadium and then the draft that was announced this week.
As part of the whole NFL trying to remove the Dan Snyder stain from the whole thing. But I don't know whether they're really going to get that stadium built.
You don't think so?
Well, I think that I'm not sure because the D.C. Council didn't feel well consulted about this boondoggle, and so we'll see what happens.
I'll tell you what, though, the NFL draft on the National Mall in 2027 is going to be perfect. It's going to be spectacular.
Bad for traffic, thumbs down. Thumbs down.
Image number 2, what do we got? Oh, lovely. Lovely, lovely. And it's video. It was the Barbara Bush stamp, right? And the First Lady, Melania Trump, this was an initiative of hers over at the White House, I believe, yesterday.
Acting normal, being normal. This is Melania Trump, who went to Rosalind Carter's funeral and won plaudits from, and we don't see very much of Melania Trump. She's not at the White House very often. This is Melania Trump honoring the opposite kind of Republican from her husband, Barbara Bush, who's very popular, and it's a cool move.
Cool move, cool gesture. Do we have a third one? I think we do. What else do we have? Some of the best images of the week. Oh, yeah. So here's the thing. The Cubs were like, he's our guy. No, the Pope's a White Sox fan. Did you know that?
Yeah, the Cubs are evil, and
see, this is part of the conversation.
The Cubs are bad, and they obviously hate Cardinals. And I say this as a St. Louis Cardinals fan, so I'm not surprised that they did the wrong thing here because boo Cubs.
Pretty awesome. A first American Pope with Leo the 14th. You have, speaking of awesome, the best Sunday show in the business. Who do you have this weekend? Ooh, Mitch Landrieu. And Tom Cole.
So Tom Cole, who's number one appropriator, chairman of the committee, he's a big deal, so it would be interesting talking to him. Mitch Landrieu, former mayor of New Orleans, who's trying to make something happen for Democrats to reconnect to the working class.
You took your promo down earlier.
It's so powerful. Or maybe they're Cubs fans in the control room. Maybe Cubs fans in the control room. You don't know.
That's a little bit of Friday Night Unfiltered. That does it for us here on The Hill. I'm Blake Berman. I thank you for watching. I'll be back on Monday, but I do hope he does have the best Sunday show in the business. You watch Chris, 10 a.m. Eastern, here on News Nation. Have a great one.